Hi, everybody. Good to see you all again.
How you doing?
Good. Fire away.
Andy, you got 2 weeks out here on the field with your team, with your offense. How much does kind of the everything change once you get to this point in the calendar?
Well, what's really good is that you actually, there's one thing to talk about things in installations and show them film of other people or years past, last fall here, but then they get to see themselves doing it. So what happens for them is everything gets a little more real. The self-reflection really amps up and increases. And typically, this is true of football, and I really believe this as a teacher, we all need to make mistakes. And so when you go out here, there's mistakes that happen, and then there's corrections that occur, and they're the ones making the mistake, you know what I mean? Or learning perhaps from someone else that they saw and observed. So it's real, it's football.
We talked to Drew a few weeks ago, and he said two things. One, you give pop quizzes, and two, you're asking the quarterbacks for their feedback on what you guys are doing. Could you tell me about both of those aspects?
Well, one, when you talk about quizzes, to me, any kind of quiz, when he's pop quiz, he's probably talking about maybe being in a meeting and there's some sort of call out. I think I've said this before, but I got into this to teach and coach. And so I want to stay on the cutting edge of anything that we're doing in terms of teaching. So when we talk about any kind of quiz, either in person or maybe on paper or online, it's going to have to do with, checking for understanding, right? Having them recite it back instead of just lecturing to them. I don't think people learn that way very well. And then the second part of your question about feedback, I always want to ask and engage guys what they see, what they do, what they think. One thing that's really prevalent, I think, nowadays is everyone's access to information. And you could go online. I was at a coaching clinic here recently, and I said, if you want to learn about how to coach receivers better, all you got to do is get on YouTube, right, or Google and type it, and you could watch thousands of hours of coaching clinic film on how to coach wide receivers. And our kids are exposed to that. So they have thoughts, they have knowledge, and I want to see what they know and what they think, right? Because I don't want to just tell them, right, you know what I mean, what we're going to do. I want them to understand why we're doing things. I want them to understand what we're going to be doing, and then kind of piece together the how with them, if that makes sense.
James was saying that it's the why that's important and telling these guys why you're doing stuff. Can you talk about what that's like?
Yeah. Okay. Well, there's three things that are really important when you're trying to get people to do something, like an objective. It's what, it's how, it's why, right? And a lot of times what's really you want to do as a coach, you want to spend a lot of time on the how, which is really important. So none of those stages is least important than the other. But if you don't start with why and you don't start with what, if you don't start with those two things, the how gets lost, if that makes an understanding of the thing. So we want to make sure everything that we're doing, that you are explaining why we're doing those things. Everything from drilling into practice, to a scheme, to a technique, whatever. Why are we doing these sort of things? And if you were to ask me 15 years ago, or maybe ask me today, what's different today than when I was coaching 15 years ago? I think me personally, I know a lot of coaches who are doing a good job, I would tell you, I bet they say that they do a much better job explaining why they do what they do to their students.
Andy, you mentioned lots of information being out there on the internet. Going back to time at Buffalo, you used outside zone quite a bit in the run game. Why is that important to what you've done?
Well, I think when you talk about zone schemes in general, albeit inside, outside, maybe a mid-zone, you want to have I've used the word distortion, I think, before in press conferences, and that's a good play that's going to create a lot of natural distortion, for our run scheme and our running back. So you always want to have balance in how you're going to run the ball, but having that play and running that play is something that not everyone does. So we want to make sure that we know that our investment in that play is going to pay off, and we are investing in that play.
James said that the offense is really emotionally invested right now, fighting. How did you kind of rally the group around when you got here?
Well, I think it starts with getting them to understand. You guys asked the question of why. Here's why we're doing these things. I think I also spent time talking to them all one-on-one and asking them what do they want from their offensive core and what do they want from their offense. What do they want their offense to look like? And making sure that they understood. And there's a lot of consistencies there when you ask people, what does you want it to look like? And showing them, these are the things you want it to be. So let's go be these things. We can't just talk about being enthusiastic. We can't just talk about being physical. We can't just talk about trying to be explosive, right? Or be on the same page or all the things that we've said. We have to go out there and do that. We have to be very intentional about doing those things. And I think, aside from what myself and the rest of the staff are doing on offense, the players are buying in because they are yearning to win, to perform at a high level. So it's got as much of them to want to go out there and succeed at a high level as anything.
What did they say they want? You said, tell me what
In those
you want
meetings,
out
some of those things I just said, some of like they want to be explosive, they want to be enthusiastic, they want to be confident in what they're doing, right? Okay, and I said, what do you think we need? And those some of the terms of the physical, right? And there's a long list of things would come up, but some of those are the first ones at the top of my head.
What have you
As
learned
Marcus said,
about?
the room came under a lot of scrutiny last year. How'd you assess where they're at right now and how they're fitting into your offense?
I think they're progressing really, really well right now. I'm very pleased with that group. I said this after being here. I think that's a position group that's going to surprise some people because no one's going to talk about them. And I think they wear that chip on the shoulder, actually, right? And everyone's going to kind of point the finger at them, and right or wrong, that's what it is. And they're like, we'll show you. You know, I mean, I believe that they have that chip on their shoulder about it, and I do think that group's going to surprise some people.